Welcome, everyone, to this amazing Monday night. I am super excited about tonight's guest. We have the one, the only Debbie Moorhead with us tonight. And let me tell you, I don't know if you have experienced this. A lot of my buddies, we're all coming back from spring break, but we know what season we are in. We are in testing season on our campuses. And with that comes a lot of stress, comes a lot of high expectations and, some pushback and some obstacles. And I have brought in the just right person. Debbie Moorhead is a family and marriage count therapist. She is an educator. She knows what it's like to be in the trenches. She has been there, and she's here with us tonight to talk about how we can manage stress in the workplace. Debbie, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Alyssa. I'm so glad to be here. And, I do know what it's like to teach. As you know, I was there in the trenches myself for a few years. And yeah, it can be stressful, and testing time and, all the other things that happen at certain times of the year are crazy. So.
Absolutely. And you know what? Not even in education. I just feel like right now in anyone's profession, things are a little out of control right now. I'm seeing a ton of chaos. I'm seeing my friends and my family members in other professions just experiencing a tremendous amount of chaos in the workplace. So, Debbie, tell us, before we dive into our strategies, just how did you tell us about your journey from education to focusing on stress to being a marriage and family therapist? Give us a little insight into that.
Sure, that's a long lifetime, right? But I can give a real quick snippet. So, yeah, it's so funny because I always, even as a little, I think I was like in third grade, I had something in third grade that says I want to be a teacher when I grow up. And that I drew, and I did, and I am a teacher, and I love teaching. And somewhere along in those years, friends kept saying, "Oh, you're so good at listening, or you're so good at helping." And somewhere in there was just on my heart to move to become a counselor. And there was a few things along the way. I was in a very rocky relationship. That was not the best relationship, and it really had me questioning things about myself and how I was sabotaging myself and kind of creating my own, chaos in my own life. And so I went to school to get my master's degree. I got into my own therapy, so I was able to figure things out. And 30 years later, I worked, interesting. I worked in the foster care system. I worked, in a lot of interesting, stressful situations otherwise once I got into that world. And but all along, it really was for me about, I knew that relationships could be better than what we see all around us, and divorce rate, and stress. We know that stress is one of the things that creates, not only is it bad for our body, but it's bad for our relationships. And I really wanted to figure some of that out. And my most recent little part of my journey now has really been about helping couples, because we know, and just like what you said, it's kind of like there's stress and there's so much heavy expectations and so much, chaos at times that are all from outside of us in our work and other things going on. It can be from within the family too, but that that's just really, then it brings, it creates problems in the relationship. And so I'm on this, path. I'm excited about this path of, I do this one amazing couples group. And I'll tell you, so really quickly, so I told you this was a whole lifetime story here. Really quickly, my couples group is specifically about, after 30 years of being a therapist, what I saw, couples would come into me, they would want help with communication. They want help with figuring things out. But what I saw time and time again is I'd teach them, oh, here's a couples technique, or here's this, whatever. And they'd go away and they wouldn't do it.
Hmm.
And what I discovered is that it's not that they didn't want to, but that this other things got in their way from them being really consistent and focusing on their relationship. And so I have learned that I need to emphasize the piece around you have to be strong within yourself first. And so I do some things on body stuff, which includes nutrition, and it really is about all what you'll hear when we talk about stress management, but nutrition, stress management, movement, good sleep. Because when you do those things, then you're nourishing your brain. And when you're nourishing your brain, then and only then can you actually manage when your brain is kind of like fighting on fire and lighting up and all those other things. And when you learn how to then manage your brain, then you can make the better choices to really create and have your relationships be the support and the beautiful reason why we all get in relationships. So that's a roundabout story, but that's my story.
But that's what qualifies you to be the expert, Debbie. I mean, you've lived it, you've been through it, and you've helped so many people. And when we first met and discussed what our topic was going to be about, you and I both talked about kind of just like that age-old adage, you can't love anyone unless you love yourself first type thing. You can't take care of others unless you take care of yourself first. And so educators, leaders, civilians, I'm here to tell you, you might not like what you hear tonight, in a sense of we have to do some self work, because before we can focus on relationships in the workplace, in your personal life, we got to do some work on us. And sometimes it's a lot easier to be like, they're the problem. And I'm not saying any of y'all are the problem. I know y'all are wonderful, amazing human beings, but I also know I know what I need to do to eat healthy. And like I was just telling Debbie over spring break, I ate horribly. I knew I wasn't supposed to. I ate horribly, but I knew what I was supposed to and I didn't do it. So we have to do some self-work first. So Debbie, let's start. Let's talk about stress. Let's talk about stress in the workplace. What are you noticing about it? How can we tell if we're stressed?
Oh, so I'm going to talk a little bit about this because I think this is the biggest issue and I'm just going to flat out say this, our society, at least in the United States, I'm sure there's other countries as well. But our society tells us to just keep going. Just keep going. Just ignore it. Keep going. Keep pushing. Keep pushing. This is the next thing. Do the next thing. Do the next thing. That's what our society tells us all the time. And the problem is that means that our body and our brain are just, it's just building and building and building and building. And this is why it comes out. Who does it come out on? Usually it comes out on our personal relationships, right? But the problem really is, it's just because the stress and all of the demands and everything that we are just told to just kind of ignore and keep going is really that I've got to start at that place, because that is the biggest issue, is that we have bought in to, and I'm not saying don't keep going. I'm not saying fall apart. Okay. I'm not saying that, but the issue is you have to remember what's going on in our body with every stress. That our bodies are made, our caveman bodies, or our bodies and our brain are made to endure stress for short amount of times. A bear is running after me. I have to get away, right? Our bodies are made for that.
Yeah.
But in our society today, we have these stressors coming at us all day long. The next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And so what ends up happening, I mean, physically, right? That means we have cortisol pumping in our body all the time, which is not good for us. And then the other thing is, because we don't pay attention to the stressors and we're not taking time for ourselves, we are eating poorly. Right, we're running to the next thing or the next thing. Is, I totally get it for vacations, but
Mhm.
right, but when we're not taking care of ourselves and we're just letting each stress pile on top of each other, then we're not eating well. We're coming up with excuses to not move our body, right? And then, of course, by the time we're going to sleep, we're not being able to sleep well, because we have so much going on. We haven't taken care of ourselves. We're letting ourselves have caffeine too late at night and all these other things. And so we just are not. We are so this is my language, that I always say. To me, what stress management really is about is it is a radical commitment to intentional self-care.
Okay.
And I
Dive like tear that apart for us. What does that mean? Dive into that
I
for
know it.
us.
So this, the idea of and commitment. So that radical commitment to intentional self-care. If I know, and I would love, Alyssa, for you and me both, I would love to get rid of all stress in our lives, right? But we're talking to teachers too. We're talking about this time of year. We know that stresses are going to come at us. We know that the daily stresses, the stressors are going to come at us. So we can't get rid of stressors.
Yeah.
Okay. I would love to. We could all maybe go live in some mountain far away with no internet.
Yes.
Maybe have a few less stressors, but if we're living with other people, we're still going to have stressors anyway. So you'd have to be a hermit living on your own. But so really, if we're going to make it a practice to reduce stress, it's not that we're going to get rid of it, but it is this idea of this radical commitment to I will be intentional in my self-care. And this is the problem, is when we don't do this piece, stress just adds and adds and adds and adds, and then it has to come out in some way.
Yeah.
Right. And it usually is not the prettiest ways that it comes out. And it's usually on our loved ones that it comes out. In worst case scenarios, we really blow up and we may screw up at work. But most of the time we know it's a survival piece to do well at work. So we contain it at work and then it comes out elsewhere. So what do I mean by radical commitment to intentional self-care? I look at it in two different ways. And one of those is what we usually think about when we think about self-care. And that is, okay, I finally made it through my day and I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to relax and listen to my favorite music for a little while. Or I'm going to go for a walk. Or I'm going to go get a massage or something like that. We need to do that, right? I know this is a very, very old, an old saying or an overused saying, right? But in, the airplane, it's like, okay, put your oxygen mask on before you can help anybody else.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But that really is what this is. It's like, where do I need to be making sure my oxygen mask is on first? If I am going to be the loving best person for and teachers, for the students in the classroom, for, my partner, for my spouse, for my kids, if I'm going to be the best person that I can be, then I need to take care of myself. And I'm just going to say this I know there are male teachers and that I'm sure are listening here too, but I'm just going to say, for women, we are horrible at taking care of ourselves. And some of that is our hormone. We have the oxytocin, oxytocin, which is the cuddle hormone or the nurturing hormone. We're always paying attention to everybody else. And that is the problem, is that we put other people's needs before us. But
would you even say, Debbie, I'm sorry to interrupt, but like, I know, in my audience, I have a lot of leaders in here, people who lead others. Would you also say, like, not even in, like, if you want to be a good leader, like the best leader you can be, you got to take care of you first.
Yes.
Before you take, like, you got to put your oxygen mask on. Otherwise, you're not going to be the leader they need you to be.
Yeah, no, it definitely, I was saying more, in our personal relationships, but absolutely when you are a leader, and here's the thing that I'm going to say, and I'll actually include it in the personal relationships. If you have children around you, you want a role model. Okay. You want to be a role model. So as a leader, you are role modeling this idea of self-care, and you want to be speaking to the importance of that for the people around you that you are leading. And certainly then if you have children, you are a role model to your children.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that is
100%.
exactly right. Yeah. So I want you to really think about this idea of self-care. This is one level of self-care, which is I will be intentional in giving myself chunks of spaces or time.
Okay.
So
I like that. So level 1 is intentional chunks of time.
Yeah. And pick things. And we'll talk about this at the end. This is actually one of the gifts that I want to give away. It's a wonderful list of all sorts of different activities. It's actually an activity that I do when I'm working with the people that I work with, because I want them to, have this list that can remind them. We tend to do like a handful of our fallback things that are our self-care things, and that's okay. But we need to go outside of that, especially if we have more stressors on us. We need to, going to get a massage is not one of my little handful of things. My handful of things is, I sit down and watch my favorite movie, or I watch, I like to watch some old YouTube of Whose Line Is It Anyway, because it makes me laugh, so
too.
I have some of those that are my go-tos, but if I have really a lot of extra stressors that are going on for me, I need to get even a more bigger chunk of that. So I'm going to schedule a massage, and I'm going to go away and, be in a sauna for a little while and get a nice massage and really take care of myself. Or I'm going to, sometimes, and I don't mean to generalize, but men sometimes are so much better. They're just like, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go take care of myself. Women tend to let that nurturing, but there's this to do, and there's this to do, and there's this to do. And we don't do that. We need to learn to just go, whatever, I'm going to go play golf right now. Or I'm calling my couple of closest friends, and we're going to go and have a drink for the evening or whatever, or go have dinner or whatever. We need.
Okay, but Debbie, I want to add to this though, because you are hitting the nail on the head. And every example that you have provided as your intentional chunk of time has been kind of like a hit of dopamine. I'm going to go be active, or I'm going to go find humor. I'm going to laugh at something. I'm going to be with my girlfriends and enjoy camaraderie. Like everything is a hit of dopamine. And teachers and educators, I'm looking at you right now. That does not mean drink a case of White Claw and tear your body up and sleep all day. And don't get me wrong, I have been that person that drank a case of White Claw. I ain't judging anybody, but we can't make self-care something that's unhealthy. So yes, go drink, because I'm gonna drink my White Claw. However, don't call it self-care, because that isn't necessarily self-care. Notice how Debbie's examples were a hit of dopamine. Find something that's going to make you active or bring you joy, not something that's going to hurt your body.
Yeah. And that's the sabotage piece. Yeah. You don't, and you have to be really, because this is what we do too. When we just let stress, and then we escape it. You're talking, right? These are the things that are more escape. And escape is never, anything we escape into is eventually going to sabotage and make things worse. So, drinking, even eating totally out of control. Yeah. For a long period of time. Right.
Debbie, I will tell you, I worked in a very toxic school district for 2 years. It was the hardest time in my professional life. In just 2 years, I gained 50 pounds.
Yeah.
2 years, 50 pounds. That was my Pop-Tart weight. Like, that was my donut weight. It was my self-care was, I'm going to shut the world down. I'm going to eat at midnight a bunch of chocolate and kind of cry and watch some movies. That was not, I thought it was self-care. It was not
No,
self-care.
it's not self-care. So very, very different. And in fact, that leads to the second level, the other level, because the second level is, so I'm going to say that is self-care, quick self-care in the moments.
Ooh, tell me about that.
Let me describe what I mean by that. Because this is the other problem. This is the other problem, is that we are so used to, and where I started with, society just tells us keep going, keep going, keep going. So we are not paying attention to what's going on in our body throughout the day. We're not paying attention to our feelings throughout the day. Now, I'm not saying do not live by your feelings, but our feelings are telling us something. And our society has told us ignore the feelings and keep going. And we actually don't want to ignore the feelings. And we don't want to keep going. Now, I'm not saying stop working or leave work in the middle of the day. What I am saying is stop for a moment and do a small self-care activity in that moment. It resets your brain. It resets your body. It tells your body to release cortisol. Okay. Those are the things that are in our society we just don't do. And I know most of you guys are intelligent people. You've heard breathing, but you know what? Breathing is actually one of those activities. It's really fascinating. I just recently I'll geek out in my stuff, but I just recently took a 6-month program on the polyvagal theory. The polyvagal theory, it can get complicated, but it's very, very simple, right? We have this vagus nerve that runs throughout our body, right? And it's connected to our parasympathetic and our sympathetic. And for those of you that are in biology, but basically we have this wandering nerve throughout our body. And what's really, really fascinating is that in this theory, they have discovered. So I have always taught breathing, and I do breathing daily. I do breathing regularly throughout my day. Whenever I'm feeling tense, whenever I'm feeling stress, I note what my body is feeling and I stop. And I pause, I take a breath, right? And I've always taught 5 breaths in and 6 breaths out. And somewhere I learned that and it worked for me. So I teach it to everybody else. But in the polyvagal theory, I actually just learned that we actually have this thing that's called the vagal break. We can actually train ourselves to bring ourselves into a calm space. And what's really fascinating, it's really fascinating. So we have in this part of this nerve, this big, wandering nerve, we have one branch of the nerve that goes from the hind part of our brain, which is the survival part, down into our heart. And then another one that goes from our heart up into our brain. So what's really interesting is when the nerve that is from our brain, yes. When our nerve that's from our brain, the hind brain that goes down to our heart, let me go the other way. The one that goes from our heart up into our brain it engages. So when we're breathing in, that one is engaged. That one gets engaged, and it actually brings a slight acceleration. But when we breathe out, the other one that's engaged going down, it brings a calm. And so if you can think about it almost like, and they call it the vagal brake, if you think about it like your brake pedals or a bike brake, right? When I'm breathing in, when I'm breathing in, I'm actually releasing the brakes and I'm going a little bit faster. But when I breathe out, I'm putting the brakes on. So I can actually train my brain and my body to bring myself into a calm. Okay. And it is a type of, it's breathing is a mindfulness technique, but we are actually doing something that benefits our body when we do that. So when you do the breathing, any breathing technique you can pick, there's many out there, but make sure that you're doing the exhale a little bit longer, because that's what's training your brain and your body to go into a calm state.
How many times would you recommend us to? So if we're going to do this, I'm a teacher. During my conference period and I'm feeling the stress. Someone's just made me really mad in our collaborative team meeting. Do I just do it once? Do I do it twice? What's your recommendation?
Yes. Here's the way I'm going to say it. Start practicing it now, because I'll tell you, when we're really, really stressed, your brain hasn't been trained yet to fully kick in and take that. So start to, I'm going to say first, I'm going to say first, start practicing this even when you're only just a little stressed, because you're starting to train your brain and your body to go into that calm state, so that when you are more stressed, like that situation, you already trained your brain and your body to come into a calm state. Because I mean, I would love to say that the breathing just is going to get you right in that calm state right away. But the problem is, just like people who do meditation and other things, it takes time to train our brain into this. So right now, I actually would recommend, and I know you're not even stressed at this point, hopefully, but maybe some of us are. When you lay down at night, and this is what I always recommend for my clients, and I do this too, depending on, my day and everything else, but I will actually lay down in my bed. I'll put my hand on my belly, down below my belly button, and I will do 10 of those breaths. I will breathe into the count of 5 and out to the count of 6 and into the count of 5 and out 6 times. Oftentimes 10 times. Oftentimes I don't even make it to the 10th one. I will fall asleep. But now I'm starting to teach my brain, train my brain to do that. And then when let's say you're in your daytime and you're in the classroom and, a kid kind of irritated you a little bit, practice that breath right then and there. And you don't have to do it 10 times. If you do put your hand on your belly, nobody's going to know it anyway, but you're going to know it. That's the wonderful thing that I love about the breathing technique, is people don't even know that you're doing it. So just practice it. And then the more you practice it in that really, really stressful situation, your brain and body will more quickly go to a calmer space. So there's no right exact answer, because this gets a little bit more, it depends on how strong the feeling is, how intense the situation is. We may need to do, 10 breaths and nobody will even know it. But sometimes, I've trained myself now to where sometimes even one breath will get me into a calm space. Sometimes I may need 3, but the more you practice it, the quicker you get into that space.
Yeah. Well, and Debbie, I know I have a lot of friends and family members who, I'll bring this stuff up and they're like, "Oh, Alyssa, you're so woo-woo." Like, I really am the tree hugging hippie in my friend group. Like, they all know this, everyone I work with. So I'm a huge advocate for meditation and for breathing. And so I want to just say this, and correct me if I'm wrong, be like, "Alyssa, no ma'am." But I know that some people might feel silly and out of their comfort zone, or like sometimes they feel like they look ridiculous trying these breathing exercises. But I'm here to tell you, you look even more ridiculous when you snap at someone or totally lose your cool. So I'd rather look a little silly. And honestly, if you're a teacher, make it part of your classroom practice. Those kids need to calm down too. Yeah. So let me tell you, breathe with, like, maybe at the very start of class or at the very end of class. Principals, do it with your teachers and staff meetings. Just make it a natural habit
Yeah.
of we're going to breathe in for 5, exhale for 6.
Yeah. Yeah. I so agree with that. That's, that is exactly what we need to do. And it makes such a difference physically in our body in all sorts of different ways. So it's so important to do this. And yes, you can also do some mindful techniques. Just so you know, the breathing is a mindful technique. There's a beautiful technique that I use sometimes combined with my breathing, and nobody even knows you're doing it. It's called 3 senses. You stop and you just stop, and 3 things that I hear, 3 things that I see, and 3 things that the sensation of touch that I'm feeling. Like I feel my shoes on my feet, or I feel my collar around my neck. So the breathing, the 3 senses, there's other mindful techniques, but those are things you can do. Other people don't even know you're doing it. Yes, teach your students, principals, teach have your teachers do it. Again, I'm going to go back to where I started. Our society tells us to ignore everything and keep going. And yet that's what causes us to, react and blow up and, behave in ways that make things worse for us.
Yeah.
So if you put these, these 2 practices, one on a daily basis, where am I feeling tension right now? Am I feeling stressed right now? Because we feel stressed several times throughout the day. And if I am, and start to pay attention to where you hold your stress in your body. I know I hold mine in my shoulders. Some people hold theirs in their hands. Pay attention to where you hold stress in your body, so that's your clue of like, ooh, we hold our breath, right? We're holding our breath, right? Pay attention to how you're holding stress, so that you're tuned in and you go, I'm going to breathe in and breathe out right now. And again, yes, it looks funny. I mean, when you're first learning it, that's why I say practice it in your bed at night. Nobody even knows it, or go to the bathroom and practice it, and really make sure that your belly, you're breathing deep down into your belly. So your belly should be rising and collapsing, but make sure that you're doing it. And eventually nobody even needs to know you're doing it, but you're still benefiting. Your body is benefiting when you actually do these little simple mindful moments. You are getting cortisol out of your body. You're helping your brain to know, oh, I'm okay, everything's okay, and then you're going to be able to make better choices. So going back to that escaping, then it's like, okay, I help to reduce my stress throughout the day today. So when I get home, I can make better choices in interacting with people. Maybe I still do need to go. I need to just escape for 30 minutes to go take care of myself for a little bit. And then I'll come back and be able to jump in. And then you can choose the bigger chunks of self-care. So
I love this. Someone on LinkedIn, I don't know the name, but it says we do CD on morning daily announcements that incorporate the drain, star, balloon, or pretzel. Staff and students do these breathing techniques simultaneously. I love this. You do this. You start your day with this as an entire staff. And then guess what? You've normalized breathing as a stress reducer. I love that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm excited to know that that's happening. And the more that can happen, the better off, everyone is going to be, for the students, for the teachers, for the leaders. So
100%. So, okay, Deborah, tell me, is there a level 3 now? We've kind of talked about in the moment stress reducer. We've talked about finding chunks of time and space. Do we have a level 3?
I usually just talk about those 2 levels, but what I would definitely say, and I think we know, you just had spring break, all of us need, if I were to say there was a level 3, it would be, we need those bigger chunks of really just detaching. We need the vacation. We need the and here's what I'm going to tell you, because I know as a teacher, so we often think in vacation, I'm going to get all these things done and I'm going to do this to my house. I'm going to do this. But I really, and I will tell you, I learned this in being in the mental health field. I will tell you that the agencies that I have worked for, the one thing that they did beautifully is they made sure that we had lots of vacation time, because there was a recognition that when you are constantly giving, and as teachers and working in the schools, right, you are constantly giving, you have got to detach and take that space away.
Yeah.
So that would be, if I were to take that to another level, that's the bigger chunks. And when I work with couples, I'm like, you need to go on date nights, but you also still need to have your weekends away, or you need to have your time. We need to do that. We need to do that. So.
100%. And educators, I'm looking at you. I know we just came back from spring break, but I'm going to tell you, one of my best friends, she was working up at the school during spring break. I took my daughter to dance tonight, and there's another teacher in there. She's on her spring break this week. She was grading papers and like, oh, I need to make this test. I need to do this. I need to do this. So I think that there is a misconception that teachers get a lot of break time. They don't. So teachers, principals, anyone in education, any field, it's okay to detach sometimes. Yes. It is 100%. Give yourself permission. You need it. Your family needs it. Your friends need it. Mm-hmm. Your body needs it. And Deborah, before we leave though, in education, self-care has been a buzzword, a negative buzzword, and we have seen people abuse the idea of self-care. Like, my colleagues and I get frustrated often, and I've told this story so many times on my YouTube channel or even on my Instagram reels. I was baffled one day. I was sitting in, I was on a campus. One of the coordinators was giving a presentation, and she went like 2 minutes over. 2 minutes over. That was it. And one of the teachers stood up and was like, she's eating into my lunchtime. I need to take care of myself. I'm out of here. It wasn't a school day. This was a teacher work day, and they had an hour and a half lunch. I'm like, how rude. That was rude. Like, that was not self-care. You're abusing the term. Yeah. So I do want to put that out there. If you're abusing the term self-care, you're actually being part of the problem. And it perpetuates the idea in our society that we don't need to care for ourselves when we do so much.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I guess there's always going to be those people, right?
There's going to be.
Yeah, but that is the problem, because then people look down, just like what you're saying, look down on the idea, which is too bad, because that is a misuse of that. That's really just that's just disrespectful. That's how I'm going to say
it. It was I was so baffled. You should have seen my face. I didn't even hide my face. I looked at her and I was just like, and she was like, no, I'm taking care of myself. I have to do this. And I was like, no, you don't. Sit your butt down. We need, but I do think people like that are giving self-care a bad name. And we need self-care. So if you hear the term and you want to roll your eyes, please don't. We need to take care of ourselves, because just like Debbie said, you got to put your mask on before you put on anyone else's. Okay, so Debbie, any last comments? Any final words of wisdom?
If I were to say anything, I really want you to get that. Pay attention to your body. Pay attention, because we have learned to ignore, and when we ignore the stress and the feelings, I'm not saying run all over the place with them, but when we ignore it, you are only going to only sabotage yourself and your relationships in the long run.
Absolutely. So for our listeners, I know that you have a free gift for them. Tell us about it. What do we have? I'm about to put it in the chat. What do we have?
Yeah, so since this is what we were talking about today, it's an exercise that I said that I do for my clients. So what I've done is it is this exhaustive long list of self-care activities, and it includes everything from the little tiny breathing, stepping outside and looking at the clouds, so those little tiny mindful moments, to a beautiful, idea of chunks of longer term time things that you can do. And I really encourage you to get this, and just, some things on it you're going to go like, well, that would not feel like a self-care thing. Like, I think organize a party. Some people love to organize a party and they have fun with that. And that would not be something that would be stressful for you. So, but pick the things, and when you are needing to really take care of yourself, use this list to help you.
Absolutely. So what are your 3 favorite go-tos? Like, what are the books you're reading right now, the podcast you're listening to, so that maybe our listeners could chime in as well and join that initiative, or listen to get some words of wisdom there? What do you have for us?
Yeah, I have. So this is one of my go-to books that I read over and over again. It's an oldie, but a goodie. But it's Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I just love that.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's just
right here. This
nice.
is the one
there
you
you go.
This is the one you want.
Right at your fingertips. So yeah, so that is one I pick at it and read it and go back to it regularly. So that is one. I will tell you, but there's so many, and it's actually a YouTube channel, but it's called The Mindful Movement.
Okay.
And it's meditation. And I have a particular one that I listen to as I go to sleep at night. And it's just, and whether there's so many out there, you can find other ones out there too, but listening, I will be honest, I have not put enough practice into being able to meditate on my own. I like guided imagery, guided meditation. My brain follows that, and it's very helpful for me. So that's what this is. There's so many others out there that you can do with that as well. So those were really my main 2. I don't have a third one. There's so many. I have so many books that I read.
Debbie, you've written a book. What is your book?
That's so funny. Yes, I do. And you know what? I speak this. But yeah, I have my own book. It's called "You Can't Get It Done by Doing What You Shouldn't Do." And so, yeah, you can't get it done by doing what you shouldn't do. And it really is about that self-awareness, which is why that was the last piece, because you cannot create the life you want if you don't have the self-awareness, right? So it's really about self-awareness, and then it's about how to manage yourself. So it gets into stress management and other things. And then it's about how to appropriately speak up for yourself. Not like that one woman who was being disrespectful, but appropriately speak up.
Please don't give self-care a bad name.
Yeah.
Don't abuse it. But I love this title. You can't get it done by doing what you shouldn't do.
Yes.
To me, I think that speaks I have not even read the book yet. I'm going to read the book. I'm going to buy the book. I actually want to buy it for one of my audience members. So I'm going to tell you, anyone who shares this episode on social media and you tag me in it, I'm going to do a drawing and I'm going to give away a copy of the book. This is because I look at this title. This title applies to so many things.
Yes. Yeah. And that's really where it comes from, is because after 30 years of being a therapist, seeing people doing the things that are going to get them the exact opposite results of what they want. So.
Yes. I'm going to put on here, share the link to this episode and tag me on Instagram. Do that, team. Anyone who does that, I'm going to enter you for a drawing and I'm going to buy you a copy of this book because this is what we need. Awesome. Oh, Debbie, thank you so much for joining us. And go ahead and tell our audience, where can they find you?
Oh, yes. So you can find me at debbiemoorhead.com is my website. And then I also have my Facebook, which is Deborah Moorhead Coach. So
Okay, Deborah, and I'm going to put all this in the show notes, team.
yeah.
So you're going to see this, you're going to be able to find this and follow her, because let me tell you, she's got a ton of wonderful resources on her website. There are even clips of newscasts. Like I've seen your interviews on local news stations, Debbie, like some excellent strategies that you have provided on the news. And so go and look at those too. I hope you are all catching these the free resource, the self-care list. Got that on there. And thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Have a wonderful night, a wonderful rest of the week. And your homework is to practice that breathing at night before you go to bed. Excellent. Thank you. So let me have a wonderful night.